For more than 80 years, researchers at Harvard have studied what truly makes people happy and healthy. And after all that time, they discovered something astoundingly simple. Our happiness depends most on the strength of our close relationships. Let's talk about what this means for us as gay and bi men. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Better Gay Dating podcast, the podcast about the art and science of making deeper connections as men who date men. My name is Ed. I'm a dating and relationship coach for gay and bi men. And so yeah, it's a really powerful existential question. What truly makes us happy in life? And in a remarkable study that's been going now for more than 80 years, researchers at Harvard have been trying to find out. It's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development, and over the past 8 decades, researchers have been tracking the lives of hundreds of people, interviewing them, asking them to complete regular questionnaires about their lives. And what they found is that the answer to the question, what makes us most happy in life, is actually pretty simple. It's the quality of our close relationships. So it's not money, as long as you have enough to get your basic needs met. It's not career success, though that might be something to be proud of. It's not even where you live or where you were born or how old you are. It's simply your ability to build and maintain strong, close relationships, whether they're friendships, family relationships, or yes, meaningful romantic relationships. And yes, having these strong, close relationships didn't just increase the study participants' happiness and well-being, it reduced things like stress and depression and actually made them, on average, live longer. So I've known about the Harvard study for a while. I sometimes bring it up in my coaching work, but recently I read the brand new book about it called The Good Life. And so it's written by the two co-directors of the study, Robert Waldinger and Mark Schultz, and I found it a deeply insightful and eminently readable summary of the main findings of the study. I'll put a link to it in the YouTube description and episode notes if you want to check it out. But yeah, so I've based this episode on the findings of the Harvard Study of Adult Development and what I think we as gay and bi men can learn from it, because I think there are some really powerful lessons here. So I'll start by summarizing the key findings of the study and how that specifically relates to us as gay and bi men. But then, as always, I want to talk about what this actually means for us moving forward, what we can do to build stronger relationships and live happier lives, or just give our close relationships the weight, time, and energy they deserve. Because yeah, this isn't just about being gay or bi. Many people don't quite invest in their close relationships the way they could for all kinds of reasons. But for us, there are specific challenges and specific solutions that I want to talk about. So honestly, this is going to be quite a long episode, but I think it's going to be one of my most important and life-changing episodes so far. So stick around, because I'd love to share with you what truly makes a life a good life. Okay, so let's start with 4 of the key conclusions from the Harvard study. Conclusion number 1, as I said, having strong close relationships is the biggest predictor of health and happiness in our lives and even makes us live longer. In fact, this is quite an extended quotation from The Good Life, but just let me read it to you because it expresses it perfectly. In fact, good relationships are significant enough that if we had to take all 84 years of the Harvard study and boil it down to a single principle for living, it would be this: good relationships keep us healthier and happier, period. So if you're going to make that one choice, that single decision that could best ensure your own health and happiness, science tells us that your choice should be to cultivate warm relationships of all kinds. And actually, one of the keys here was that the quality of these relationships really mattered. It generally feels better to have a few close friends than dozens of acquaintances you can't really rely on. And single or divorced people are usually happier than people in relationships that are constantly draining them. And yes, cultivating these warm relationships can be challenging and even messy, and it's rarely something that happens on its own. But it's something the Harvard study and others have shown that we have to continuously choose to build day by day and year by year. I'll talk more about that later. But basically what the science shows is that we're biologically wired for connection and community. Our bodies crave positive social contact with others, and when we experience negative social contact, it creates stress hormones and it activates our fight or flight response. In short, when we feel loneliness or disconnection, an instinctive ancient part of our brains experiences that as dangerous and life-threatening. Because for most of human history, it was. We couldn't survive on our own. We literally couldn't eat and stay safe without our tribe. So sure, if you've ever been ghosted and felt really shitty about it, or you felt a huge reaction in your body after some mean gay was rude to you at the club, your literal survival probably wasn't at risk, but your body has evolved to experience these things as dangerous, not just annoying or frustrating. well-being. But the key takeaway here is that strong, close relationships are a need, not a luxury. That we need warm, safe relationships is not just some happy, clappy, nice idea. It's a biological fact. And I know we all face certain challenges when trying to build and maintain these relationships, but the simple fact is that strong, close relationships aren't just something we can opt out of without it costing us in terms of our happiness and well-being. In short, we need each other. But if great relationships really are the foundation of deeper happiness, why don't we always act like it? Well, that brings me on to conclusion number 2. What the study also found was that actually we're not very good at predicting what will truly make us happy. And as a result, we often prioritize things that don't really make us happy and overlook things that actually do. Some of this is biological, so our brains can sometimes emphasize risks or downsides over potential benefits, especially with relationships. Some researchers at the University of Chicago actually studied this in an experiment about talking to strangers on a train. Basically, people were asked to guess which on the commute home would make for a more positive experience, quietly minding their own business or striking up a conversation with a stranger on the train. And basically what they found was that initially people thought that keeping themselves to themselves would be better. But for those who were told to try chatting to a stranger on their commute, most who did said it actually made the journey much more enjoyable. So their initial instincts were wrong. And actually, I think this corresponds in gay culture also. Many, even most of us, get nervous about talking to gay or bi men we don't know. We're certain they'll reject us or say something rude. But actually, in the right spaces with the right people, they don't. It's often just our fear or the experiences of when someone has been rude to us that we give more weight to. So that's something to think about. Some of this, though, is also cultural. More broadly, we often do assume that what will make us happier is more money or a better job or more social influence or whatever. We're also bombarded with messages and advertising that say if you have this car or you go on this vacation or you wear these brands, people will respect you and you'll feel happier. But mostly it doesn't work like that. People get the thing and it doesn't massively increase their happiness or well-being. And as gay and bi men, we have our own very specific social scripts on what we think will make us happy, whether it's the hot body, the boyfriend with a hot body, the international trips, the social media followers, or whatever. But it usually doesn't work like that either. Experientially, I've met plenty of people who had many of those things, but they didn't seem to make them especially happy. I've also worked with guys who had some of these things, but behind the smiles or the parties or the thirst traps, they actually felt pretty lonely. All of those material things were not a shield for the disconnection they felt in their lives or close relationships. And obviously that's what we worked through. And that's not to say there's no value in any of these things, not at all. But it is that we tend to prioritize these more visible, more measurable, more immediate things at the expense of what actually makes us happy. Feeling seen, feeling loved, feeling connected. We often believe the lie that happiness is a six-pack or a raise or a trip to Mykonos away. And we can enjoy those things, but a much deeper joy comes from spending time and money on experiences with people we care about, whatever the activity or destination might be. Because in short, our instincts about what will make us happy often aren't accurate, so we have to consciously retune them. And that matters especially given conclusion number 3, that even if life is wildly unfair sometimes, we can always improve our lives and our relationships for the better. This really felt like a big one, especially for us as gay and bi men, but it's one of the central themes in The Good Life. What the Harvard study highlighted was how much life really is not fair sometimes. We're all born into different levels of privilege, whether that's about money and status, or just about emotional safety, how well our families were able to love and support us. And as gay and bi men, we face all kinds of challenges that aren't our fault. We still face stigma and homophobia, which can especially impact our family and work relationships. Our access to other queer people can vary a lot depending on where we live. And I know this is a regular podcast theme, but all of the shame and emotional baggage that comes from this stigma does make it harder for us to find safe, stable connections in this community. But something the study found is that we always have some power to improve our relationships and therefore our overall happiness. To quote The Good Life, all of us have a rich mix of things we can't control and things we can. Each of us must find ways to work with the hand we're dealt. So it's not always easy, but focusing only on the things we can't control often just makes us unhappier and feel like there's nothing we can do about it. So this is really about accepting that, yeah, being LGBTQ in this society does present us with specific challenges, but as many of us are doing, we can build community and connection despite that. Or to quote from The Good Life again, saying something matters and saying it seals one's fate are two very different things. In fact, the Harvard study found that genetics and personality do have a huge impact on overall happiness, but about 40% is down to our conscious actions and choices. That is, we can adapt to our circumstances, and a lot of happiness is attitudinal. It's how we feel inside, about ourselves, about what's possible, or just about what we deserve. And another angle to this, which can be especially nuanced for us, was that basically it's never too late. The Harvard study showed that it was never too late to improve your life and relationships. No one is too old. No mistake or misfortune was game ending, and no bad circumstances had to define anyone completely. Actually, in The Good Life, the authors talk about age and how all kinds of people can find themselves seriously dating or building a social circle for the first time in their 30s, 40s, or beyond, and how it often did feel unsettling because they felt like they should have done it all by now. And this obviously resonated a lot with our experiences as gay or bi men, where many of us have these second adolescences when we come out, which is sort of a period when it feels emotionally like we're teenagers again, exploring ourselves and our wants and needs in a completely new way. And that happens because most of us weren't able to be our authentic selves in our actual teenage years. And so we typically end up going on this whole self-acceptance and self-discovery process as adults, which can feel fun and exciting, but also strange and disconcerting. And a lot of us do feel some shame around this, even though it's not our fault. I've worked with guys from the 20s to the 70s who wished they'd come out sooner, even if they weren't really able to. I've also worked with guys who spent years only hooking up before starting to date for something longer term, which felt like they were completely starting over in some ways too. So yes, navigating these new chapters in life often can feel strange or challenging, but the key is that the markers of when we expect certain things to happen in someone's life are absolutely not universal. And we should normalize that, especially as queer people, where lots of us build incredible lives that don't necessarily follow heteronormative expectations or timelines. But yeah, in short, whatever circumstances we're in, we always have the power to improve our lives, build new and meaningful relationships, or just deepen our existing ones. And actually, on that topic, conclusion number 4 was especially powerful. It's that a happy life and good relationships are not just things we arrive at, they're things we have to actively build and maintain. I say this a lot in this work, that great relationships aren't just found, they're built, but it applies to basically every kind of relationship. That means that if we want the benefits of a close relationship, we have to prioritize them. We have to invest in those relationships, nurture those connections, and offer the kind of warmth, safety, and support that we need from others. The Good Life also talks about the concept of social fitness, which is partly about prioritizing our social lives in the ways we might prioritize our physical fitness. We wouldn't just go to the gym twice a year and say that was our bodies taken care of. We have to actively maintain our physical fitness and social fitness in similar ways. But social fitness is also about learning the skills of building close relationships, whether they're social skills or listening skills, or just developing the self-confidence to make those new connections. Because yeah, something I often talk about with clients in sessions is how we have to learn to love. We all have a desire to connect with others, for sure, but we also have to develop the concrete skills of creating and nurturing loving relationships. And more broadly, we don't really live in a society that prioritizes our relationships or happiness in that way. We exist under capitalism, which has its own priorities, and making the majority of people feel happy, fulfilled, and connected really isn't one of them. And actually, something I think about a lot in this work is how much time, money, and effort most of us invest to become good at making money or progressing in our careers, how much we train and consciously improve to be good at that, and by comparison, how little time, money, and effort most of us invest to become good at our relationships. Because again, if strong relationships are the thing that most makes us happy and healthy, why is that? Why isn't this social education part of every school curriculum? Why doesn't every town have evening classes on how to love and connect with other people more deeply? And I know I am a bit biased here because this is the work I do and the work I deeply believe in, but I also see all the time how honing just a few key skills in this area or just getting the right relationship support can vastly change someone's life. But it makes you think, why is investing in our personal lives often such an afterthought if it's the most powerful investment we could make to feel good about our lives? So those are the 4 key conclusions. Number 1, good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Number 2, we're not always very good at predicting what will make us happier. Number 3, we can always improve our lives for the better, no matter our circumstances. And 4, we have to be proactive about building a good life and investing in our close relationships. But what can we do about this? As conclusion number 3 told us, there's always something. So let's talk about 3 powerful things you can do based on what the Harvard study tells us is important. The first is to do what's called a close relationship audit. This is probably what it sounds like. It's a review of our close relationships as they are to see what it teaches us. So a great place to start is by thinking about who do you have in your life already? Who are the 5 to 10 people who have the most impact on your life? They could be friends, family members, co-workers, a romantic partner, your regular hookup buddy, whoever most affects your day-to-day life. Then one tool from the Harvard study is that the researchers asked people to think about how these relationships each measure up on 2 factors: how frequently you see that person and how much the relationship energizes or depletes you. Because when you do that, you'll get some really valuable information. You might discover that someone you spend a lot of time with really is depleting you, and maybe that's an opportunity to prioritize that relationship differently. Or maybe you found out there's someone who really does energize you that you don't spend enough time with but could. Or maybe you just realize that there is an opening in your life for more relationships that energize you in general. Because I often do this sort of exercise in coaching sessions with the guys I work with, and it's a really powerful one. Often people do figure out that they actually do know people they like spending time with that they just haven't hit up in a while. Or it does make crystal clear that actually, they are a bit lonelier than they'd like to be, and they do want to get out there and make some new connections. So it can be a really interesting exercise to try, just as an honest look at the lay of the land for you right now. And then the second thing is to check in on your openness to meaningful connection, because this is something worth reflecting on, especially as queer men. The Good Life does talk a fair bit about how men are often socialized to value independence or avoid connection and emotional intimacy to the point it can isolate us. It's not that men have less of a need for supportive relationships than women, it's that we're socialized to think that we don't need them or that relying on others is weak. And again, growing up gay or queer does add extra layers of disconnection that can make us feel like no other gay or bi man could love us in the way we want, or could be the reliable friend we'd like, or would even be interested in us in the first place. So this isn't about blaming anyone for where they are or what they rationalized about our community, but it is about getting curious and asking yourself, is there any element of you over protecting yourself here that might not be serving you? Or are you seeing the disconnection that does exist in our community and seeing that as the only thing that exists? Or are you just telling yourself that you don't need the strong relationship science says we all really do? Because if we've concluded that it's not even worth trying to build the connections that we need to feel happy and fulfilled, it obviously does cost us. And then the third thing is to take one bold step towards more connection. That is, what are those pragmatic steps you could take to build a stronger or more connected personal life, even if it's just a small step at first? Does it mean reprioritizing who you do and don't spend time with? Does it mean making your social or personal life more of a priority in general, even though relationships can be hard and the outcomes uncertain sometimes? I talked about this a bit on last week's episode about making in-person connections, but this is sometimes the key here. Do you need to take a few more small but manageable risks that could open you up to new social opportunities? Because again, we tend to overestimate the risks in many social situations and underestimate the benefits. I know I have. I also think as gay men especially, it can feel like way more of our habits or customs are more about disconnection than connection. I'm talking about things like transactional hookups, the casual meanness and status games, the big events where we're in close proximity but not really connecting in any meaningful way. And obviously it's not about saying there's no space for parties or having fun, but if you feel lonely sometimes, can you exchange some of these disconnection rituals for more connecting ones? Maybe more quality time with friends or attending a gay social event or sports team? Or would it help to think about how you show up around other people? Is there some way you could be a more supportive friend or partner? Could you do a bit more to show up with warmth, curiosity, and care around others, both people you've just met and those you've known for years? Because with all of this, obviously being a good friend or partner to others is one of the most powerful ways to attract and keep a good friend or partner. Again, there's a lot we can't control here. Great relationships can't be forced, but we can create opportunities for meaningful connection, and we can be a great friend or partner who's ready to connect with others. So what feels like a good next step for you? What small step could you try today or tomorrow that would likely benefit you and those you care about? Because yeah, if our close relationships really are the secret to happier, healthier lives, maybe it is time for a revolution in how we as gay and bi men love and connect with each other. Maybe the real status symbols in our community aren't the body or the followers or the money, but how connected we feel, how much warmth we're able to let in, and how well we show up for each other. And maybe it's time we really started prioritizing close connection and being in community with each other and doing the healing we need to that makes those things possible. Because maybe that's what the Harvard study has been pointing to all along, that the secret to a good life as queer men isn't just about us as individuals, it's about what we can build together. Thanks for listening, as always. And with this episode especially, if you know someone who'd benefit from what I've talked about, please do let them know about it. It really helps get this podcast in front of those who need it. And as always, if there's anything I've covered today that you want hands-on support with in your life, you can find out more about working with me at bettergaydating.com. Have a great week, and I'll catch you next time.